Ready to go?
Yep. Hi, my name is John Mason. I'm the founder and facilitator of Masters of the Journey. We're meeting in Bellingham, and it's January of 2016. This is our first meeting of 2016, but our fifth group meeting overall. We started meeting in October. I am really excited. This is going to be a great year, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I don't necessarily try to give a lot of information at the beginning of these meetings because there's a different format. For those of you who haven't been here, there's a different format that we use, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But for those of you who have not been here before, or for those of you who are confused about why you're here, you've come in the past and you still don't know why, but you keep showing up, I want you to know that there is a reason why you're here. This is not an accident. I'm not sure that you fully understand it, but the people that come to these meetings are finding out about it in interesting ways, ways that I don't fully understand or know, and I really appreciate. There's a sense that our world needs more connection. For thousands of years, we've come together in circles and small groups, and we've shared stories. Sometimes it was around a campfire, sometimes it was the tribe, sometimes it was an interest group, sometimes it was political, sometimes it was economic. There's a lot of reasons why people have come together. I saw that in our world there's a need for us to have connection with people and not necessarily just superficial stuff, not just the fun stuff. Now, I don't know how many people here are in the massive Northwest tribe called the 12s. The 12s in the Northwest are the people that are supporting the Seahawks.
Yeah. Oh.
Everybody jumps on board, socioeconomic groups, different locations. Well, you're not, and there's a lot of us that are here that may not be, but I just want you to know, I think the reason why it's so big is because people need connection. That's how they're choosing to connect. My point of view and my belief is that we can do something that's not quite so superficial. We can help and support one another in our spiritual growth, consciousness, and development. My fantasy is that like minds come together, and some people come back and some people don't. This is not going to be for everyone. It's a non-religious community. It's a non-religious experience for us to get together and connect and to join with one another. The other thing that I really want to mention at the beginning of this is we're called Masters of the Journey for a reason. We are all masters. You bring a lifetime of experience with you to this group, and that's why we're here. You may not know that you are as a master, but I'm going to challenge you to think back from as early as you can. Think about the challenges, the experiences that you have gone through, survived, perhaps even grown from. Some of us have been damaged by these experiences, but we've been through a lot. And the premise of the Masters of the Journey is that if we're willing to tell our stories, if we're willing to share with other people, we can learn more from the experience by sharing and from the feedback we get. We also have the opportunity to learn from other people by being a witness to other people's stories and other people's experience. And so I appreciate that you're here. Some of you don't even know why. It's great. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to consider doing something. No, I'm not going to ask you to consider. I want you to do it, but I want you to consider how you're going to respond to this. I want you to think about 3 things that have been turning points in your life that have come to you from a challenge that you've experienced. And not only what those 3 things, those experiences are, but what you learned from them. And I'm going to give an example in a few minutes. On the other point of view, when it comes to sharing, you might want to share from the different pool of experience and knowledge. I want you to think about 3 experiences that you've had in your life that were joyful, that were fun, that you really celebrated, and what you learned from those experiences. And you're going to be able to choose from either one of those groups. And if there's time, you can share more than one. But I want you to think about the 3 things that were challenging and that you survived and you learned from, and what it was that you learned, or things that you were so wonderful, so exciting, so thrilling, and then you feel like you learned from them. Now, I want to give you an example of something that I think is very important. And it's coincidence that we're meeting today. Today is January 16th. It's an important day for me. And I'm going to tell you a story about why. My wife passed away 4 years ago today. I didn't know 4 years ago today that I would be living in Bellingham. I'm new to Bellingham also. Within the last a little more than half a year, I've moved up here. I've learned a great deal from that experience, but that experience goes back further in time. So I'm going to talk about the challenging experience that I had when I was sitting in a doctor's office in October of 2003 with my wife of 19 years, Barbara. And the doctor comes into the office, and she had complained of symptoms, and eventually they did some tests, and they put us in the specialist's office, an OBGYN surgeon from UC Med, and this woman doctor who had no bedside manner said very abruptly, "You have terminal ovarian cancer. You have 5 or less years to live." That changed my life. That was a shock. I didn't really appreciate what I know now, all these years later, about how much I needed to experience, how much I've learned, and the great gifts it has turned out to be for me. So my wife and I worked together as a team. She was a nurse, and she did a lot of research. We learned a lot along the way. We went through surgeries that were a nightmare. We went through chemotherapies, pretty much difficult, some of them nightmarish. We went through procedures and tests and clinical trials. I learned things that you don't really want to learn as a person. How to argue with doctors, how to sleep overnight in the hospital, how to deal with a medical system that is doing their very best to serve whatever their needs and interests are, and sometimes it actually matches up with the patient's needs. Sometimes it doesn't. The story goes on. It's quite a long story. My wife survived over 8 years with a diagnosis of 5 years. And in January of 2012, it came as a surprise to me, because we were making plans for the spring and we had just gotten through the Christmas holiday. Things took a turn for the worse. There was nothing that they could do. With another traumatic experience in the hospital and another experience with dealing with hospice, she passed away in our home on Monday morning, the 16th. It took me more than a year, and I don't know if this is common for people, but it took me more than a year to even realize how traumatic that whole experience had been on me. On me, I had PTSD. I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't even understand some of the things that had happened, and I began to put it in perspective a year after my wife has passed away. Now, where it becomes more of a positive story is that I went out on the road, I went traveling. I knew I needed to make some changes. I didn't want to live on Whidbey Island anymore. I didn't want to live in the house that she passed away in. And I didn't know quite where to go. On one of those experiences, I drove down and I was looking around in the Southwest. I drove to Arizona. I visited friends in Bisbee, made it to Tucson, was couch surfing in Tucson. I don't know if you know what couch surfing is, but it's staying in people who you don't know, and you're staying with them basically for free, and you're there because they're locals and they can show you a little bit about the community, and I thought it was a tremendous experience. So on a Monday, I was working in Tucson, and I was looking for places to either move to or places where I could do retreats at, residential healing retreats. And I get an email from this person who said,